Why? Why did it have to be me? My mother's cold voice echoed through the heavy atmosphere in the living room, like a blade slicing through the air. Her eyes locked onto my belly, as if it were an unforgivable disgrace. I, Sophia, 24 years old, pregnant with my first child, only wished for a small word of congratulations from her. Instead, the nightmare began. If I hadn't stepped through that door that day, maybe everything would have been different. Maybe I wouldn't have witnessed firsthand the twisted, brutal version of love my mother had given me all these years. That afternoon, Noah, my husband, and I drove nearly 2 hours from Denver to the small town of Grand Lake, where I was born and raised. The whole drive, my hand clutched the hem of my shirt tightly, heart full of hope. I foolishly believed that news of her first grandchild might make my mother look at me differently, might make her love me just once. As soon as we stepped into the house, my older sister, Allison, 3 years older than me, rushed over and hugged me tightly. "Sophia, it's been so long," she exclaimed, her lavender perfume faintly lingering in the air. I returned her hug, forcing down the anxiety bubbling in my chest. Mother stood at the kitchen doorway, her gaze slicing through me like a blade gliding across frozen water. "Oh, I didn't prepare anything for dinner," she said, with a voice both polite and icy, before turning back into the kitchen. No hug. No greeting. I heard her rummaging in the kitchen, and moments later she came out carrying a plate piled high with sugar-laden cookies. I forced a weak smile. Mother knew I didn't eat sweets. I had recently been diagnosed with mild gestational diabetes. But she still placed the plate right in front of me. Noah, with his usual tact, quickly broke the tense silence. "Oh, the cookies look delicious. To me, who I'm eating with matters more than what I'm eating." Mother merely nodded coldly, glancing at me briefly before sitting down opposite us. My heart pounded violently in my chest. This moment. It was time. I grabbed Noah's hand, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Mom, Allison, we came today to tell you something important." Mother narrowed her eyes, the forced smile slipping away. I gripped Noah's hand tighter, my throat dry. "I'm pregnant, Mom." My voice trembled slightly, but I still smiled, hoping for a miracle. Silence. A suffocating silence engulfed the room. Allison was the first to react, her blue eyes lighting up. "Oh my God, Sophia! Congratulations!" She rushed over and hugged me, patting my back with genuine happiness. But Mother. She just sat there, her gaze shifting from me to my belly, then darkening ominously. I felt the air around me thicken. "Noah, I'll step outside to take a work call," Noah said softly, kissing my forehead before leaving. Allison quickly stood up too. "I'll make some tea." Leaving just me and Mother. I turned toward her, my heart pounding wildly. "Mom." The rage, long suppressed in her eyes, exploded. She shot to her feet, her eyes filled with hatred and contempt. "Why you?" she spat, her voice slicing through the air like an icy gust through a crack. Instinctively, I backed away, my hands protectively wrapping around my belly. The first grandchild should have been Allison's, not some useless trash like you. Before I could react, she suddenly raised her foot and kicked me hard in the stomach. The pain stabbed through me like thousands of knives piercing my flesh. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching my belly, gasping. "Mom, please, don't." The kitchen door slammed open, and Allison rushed in, still holding a cup of tea. "Mom, what are you doing?" The front door burst open too. Noah ran in, his face paling when he saw me writhing on the floor. "Sophia!" he shouted, scooping me into his arms, his face a mixture of fear and fury. Mother stood motionless, her face emotionless, coldly stating, she'd just bumped into the table herself. Allison's hands shook as she clutched her phone tightly. "I'm calling an ambulance." The wail of the ambulance siren pierced the night, each beat hammering against my heart. I felt Noah's firm hand gripping mine tightly, while Allison sobbed against my shoulder. I knew, from that moment, nothing would ever be the same again. The ambulance tore through the night, red and blue lights flashing against my ghost-white face. Noah sat beside me, gripping my hand tightly, while Allison knelt next to the stretcher, tears streaming down her face. My blood felt like it was freezing inside me, each wave of dull pain twisting cruelly from my lower belly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mother's face. Cold, sharp as steel, burned into my mind like a brand. The vehicle jolted slightly over every turn. I heard the paramedic's reassuring voice. "We'll be at Memorial Hospital in a few minutes. Hang in there, Miss Sophia." I nodded weakly, but inside my mind the memories surged back like a broken dam, flooding everything. I remembered, when I was 7 years old, that freezing Christmas with snow blanketing the path to our home. Under the twinkling Christmas tree, the presents were stacked high, bright red and gold ribbons shining. Allison, 10 at the time, squealed with delight as she tore open her gift and pulled out a sparkling, jewel-studded princess dress. Mother hugged her tightly, laughing loudly. "That's my girl, radiant like a little fairy princess." I reached for my own tiny box, my hands trembling with hope. Inside was just a pair of thick gray socks, the kind sold at discount stores. I forced a weak smile, quietly hiding my gift behind my back, not daring to look up at Mother. "Sophia, those socks suit you," she said coolly. "Simple, fitting for someone as plain as you?" I clenched my small hands together tightly, telling myself socks were useful in winter. But deep down, the sting of being overlooked, of being deemed unworthy, carved a crack in my heart that would never fully heal. A sudden jolt pulled me back to reality. Beside my ear, the steady beeping of the heart monitor clicked rhythmically. Allison grabbed my cold hand and whispered, "Sophia, hang in there, please don't give up." I forced a weak smile, but inside it felt like my heart was being crushed. When I entered high school, the discrimination became even more obvious. Allison, with her golden hair and sparkling blue eyes, was chauffeured by Mother in a brand new SUV. And me? I had to ride an old bicycle, and whenever I asked Mother for permission to join extracurricular activities, she would sneer. "A waste of money. With your average grades, you're better off staying home." I once signed up for the track team, where I truly shined. I won first place in the district marathon during my sophomore year. I remember that day, standing on the award podium, scanning the crowd for Mother's face. But all I saw was an empty, cold space. She didn't come. She never did. Meanwhile, at every single one of Allison's cheerleading competitions, Mother showed up, loudly cheering, snapping photos non-stop. The ambulance stopped at the emergency room entrance. A team of doctors and nurses rushed over, pushing my stretcher inside, while Noah and Allison were asked to stay behind in the hallway. "Stay strong, Sophia," Noah shouted as the door slammed shut between us. I stared at the stark white ceiling, the pungent smell of antiseptic flooding my nose. In that moment, a memory from when I was 15 years old resurfaced. I was studying in the living room when Mother barged in, throwing my report card onto the table. "A C in math?" she sneered. "How shameful." I lowered my head, hands trembling with humiliation. Allison, meanwhile, only needed to get average grades to be rewarded with a beach vacation. "That's what a child who makes her mother proud deserves," Mother declared smugly. For the first time in my life, I asked myself, was I ever truly born to be loved? The nurse calling my name pulled me out of the memory. I was wheeled into the ultrasound room, a cold layer of gel spread across my belly. The screen flickered dimly. A female doctor turned toward me, smiling reassuringly. "The baby's heartbeat is still strong. We'll continue to monitor, but for now, everything looks stable." Tears welled up uncontrollably. Not from physical pain, but because after so many years, I finally felt that a part of me, this tiny life, was worthy of being protected. Unlike how I had once been rejected. When they wheeled me back into the hallway, Noah and Allison rushed over immediately. Allison hugged me, sobbing. "Sophia, you're so strong." Noah sat down next to my bed, gently stroking my hair. "I'm here. I won't let anyone hurt you again." I smiled weakly, yet with determination. Inside, an unspoken promise took root. I will never let my child endure the kind of toxic love I once knew. The white lights of the emergency room ceiling seemed to blaze brighter, burning away the darkness that had gripped my heart for so many years. My story was only just beginning. I still vividly remember the day I walked out of Grand Lake High School, clutching my diploma tightly, my heart heavy with bitterness. There were no cheers welcoming me, no family waving or shouting my name like they had done for Allison years ago. When I arrived home, Mother stood blocking the doorway, her eyes colder than a January wind. "A high school diploma? What's there to be proud of?" she sneered with contempt. "Soon enough you'll be back here mooching off me." I didn't respond. I simply walked silently into my room, packed a battered suitcase and a few cheap clothes, and quietly left the house that had imprisoned my childhood for 18 years. I rented a tiny room in the outskirts of Denver, where moldy gray walls and squeaky windows welcomed every gust of wind. No one was waiting. No red carpet rolled out. Only a simple truth remained. If I wanted to live, I had to save myself. During the day, I worked as a waitress at a small cafe downtown, lugging heavy trays and dragging my aching legs through 8-hour shifts. At night, I stayed up studying, teaching myself basic computer skills from free websites. There were nights when I broke down sobbing alone in that pitch-black room, my cries muffled by exhaustion and loneliness. But each time I remembered Mother's cold eyes on the day I left, I wiped my tears and whispered to myself, "Get up, you cannot fall." Almost a year later, fortune finally smiled on me. I found a job posting for an office trainee position at a small electronics company in downtown Denver. No college degree required, just hard work and dedication. Trembling, I submitted my application, daring not to hope too much. Yet a week later, I received the call, hired. On my first day stepping into the office building, I wore a simple business outfit borrowed from a roommate. I still remember how my legs trembled as I walked down the long hallway, the click-clack of my borrowed heels echoing against the polished floor. At the HR department, I was given a brief introduction before being led down to the work area, where I saw Noah for the first time. He stood by the printer, frowning at the jammed paper inside. When he saw me awkwardly standing there, he smiled warmly, his deep blue eyes gentle. "New here? This printer has it out for all the newbies." I laughed, a genuine laugh, rare amidst those tense, struggling days. Little did I know, that was the beginning of everything. In the days that followed, Noah would occasionally stop by my desk, patiently guiding me through each procedure. I learned quickly, wasn't afraid of hard work, and tried my best not to give anyone a reason to complain. But during the brief breaks, we started talking. Not just about work, but about life. About unfinished dreams. I had never told anyone about my distorted childhood. But with Noah, I felt a strange sense of safety. One autumn afternoon, as the sunlight turned the leaves outside golden, I told him everything. About the cold, distant mother. About the Christmases with no gifts. About the track meets where I returned home, alone. I looked at him, terrified that Noah would look at me with pity. The one thing I hated most. But Noah simply stayed silent, then gently placed his hand over mine. "You've come so far, Sophia, not because of anyone else, because of you. You're stronger than you think." Hearing those words, after so many years, I broke down in tears. Not from pain, but from being truly understood. As time passed, we grew closer. Noah patiently waited for me to open up, never pushing, never judging. He took me to simple places, parks on Sunday afternoons, a small Mexican diner around the corner, outdoor movie nights. No fancy restaurants, no grand promises. Just the gentle look in his eyes, and I knew I had found where I truly belonged. One winter night, as light snow began to fall outside my apartment window, Noah pulled a small, simple ring from his coat pocket. He did not kneel. There was no long speech. He simply said, "Sophia, will you build a real family with me? No lies, no hurt?" I threw my arms around him, tears soaking his coat. I say yes. Remembering those days, lying now on a hospital bed with Noah and Allison beside me, I squeezed my husband's hand tightly. Without those years standing on my own wounded feet, I would not have reached today. I would never again kneel before the ghosts of my past. I would live, not just for myself, but for the tiny life growing inside me. And I would do everything to make sure no one could ever steal the light from our lives. Our wedding took place on an early autumn afternoon when the leaves along Denver's winding streets began to turn golden. We didn't have a large budget for a lavish ceremony, but under a small garden lit with string lights and filled with genuine laughter from friends, it became the most beautiful day of my life. Noah's family, the Millers, welcomed me with open arms. My new mother-in-law Carol hugged me tightly right from the start. "From now on, you are my daughter. No need to be shy." Those words, seemingly simple, choked me up. I had never heard such words from my birth mother. My mother, Meredith, still attended the wedding, but her face was as cold as the snowcaps atop distant mountains. I vividly remember the moment she swept her eyes over the simple setting, then whispered into my ear as we posed for pictures. "Just a childish game. You'll fail soon enough." I stood frozen for a few seconds, a sharp searing pain slicing through my chest. But then, I tightened my grip on Noah's hand, lifted my head high, and let a victorious smile bloom. I had chosen this path. No matter how many thorns I had to walk through, I would not turn back. The days following our wedding passed in a peace I had never dared to dream of. Noah worked at his engineering company, and I started a new role as an administrative assistant at a different company, where even my smallest efforts were genuinely acknowledged. At night, we cooked together in our tiny kitchen. Warm dinners, with simple grilled meat. Laughter echoing through the cramped but love-filled apartment. I thought to myself, maybe, finally, I had found where I truly belonged. Then one cold March morning, as the spring wind still carried a bite, I saw 2 bright red lines on the pregnancy test. My heart raced, and tears spilled from my eyes uncontrollably. "Noah," I whispered as he stepped out of the bathroom. He looked at me, at the test in my hand, and almost instantly lifted me into the air with a joyful shout. "We're gonna be parents, Sophia!" I buried my face into his shoulder, laughing through tears of happiness. The good news quickly spread through Noah's family. My in-laws brought over catalogs for cribs, baby clothes, and toys. They excitedly suggested baby names, and every dinner was filled with lively chatter about the future. I was enveloped in a love I had never once felt from my own blood relatives. And yet, deep inside, a small, stubborn voice whispered, "What about Mother?" Even though my mind screamed that I didn't need her anymore, my heart throbbed with a foolish, lingering hope. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe the first grandchild would finally melt the ice in her heart. One evening, sitting by the window, the city lights shimmering across our small apartment, I picked up my phone, my fingers hesitating over the screen. After much hesitation, I sent her a simple message. "Noah and I would like to visit you and Allison next week. We have good news to share." It was a short text, but my heart pounded as if it would explode. Half an hour of silence. Then finally, Mother replied, "Up to you." Just those 3 cold words. But somehow, I still smiled, still clung to the desperate hope that at least, she agreed to meet. I didn't know that meeting would be the moment that completely shattered the fragile hope still lingering in my heart. I never imagined that in just a few short minutes, the woman who once carried me in her womb could strike a blow I would carry for the rest of my life. And that was also the moment I realized true family is not determined by blood, but by love, or the absence of it. As the ambulance siren faded down the hallway, the hospital room door burst open. My father, Mr. Henry, rushed in, his business suit still dusted with dirt. Behind him, my mother, Mrs. Meredith, followed silently, her face showing no trace of remorse. Father rushed to the bedside, panic flooding his eyes. Sophia, is this true? Your mother... Mother cut him off with a mocking laugh. Don't believe these unruly kids. She just bumped into the table herself. I struggled to sit up, a dull pain stabbing at my lower belly, every muscle feeling torn apart. Noah tightened his grip on my hand, his eyes locked onto Mother. Allison, who had never once confronted our mother, stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. I saw it, Mom. I clearly saw you kick Sophia in the stomach. The room seemed to freeze. Father turned to look at Mother, his shoulders shaking with fury. Is it true, Meredith? Mother crossed her arms, replying indifferently. She deserved it. Someone like her isn't worthy of having the first grandchild. I heard Noah clench his jaw tightly. The air in the room grew so heavy it was almost impossible to breathe. The door swung open again. A woman in a hospital uniform walked in, a social worker. I'm Rebecca Simmons, Family Support Services. She introduced herself, her gaze sharp and unwavering. According to protocol, we must intervene immediately if there are signs of abuse toward a pregnant woman. Mother let out a shrill, mocking laugh. Another false accusation. What a pathetic generation. Rebecca remained unfazed. She walked straight to my bedside, sat down, and asked calmly but firmly, Sophia, can you tell us exactly what happened? I looked at my mother. Her eyes were like two rusted blades stabbing straight into me, full of threat. But I would not stay silent anymore. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. Tonight, when I announced I was pregnant, Mother became furious. She stood up. I swallowed hard and kicked me, straight in the stomach. The hospital room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Rebecca nodded, carefully taking notes, then gently asked, Has this been the first time you were treated like this? I gripped the bedsheet tightly. Old memories. Empty Christmases. Senseless slaps. Cruel insults. Crashed over me like a tsunami. No, I answered, my voice barely a whisper. I have always been a thorn in my mother's side. And then I told my story. Piece by bitter piece, every small scar I had buried deep inside broke free into the light. I spoke of holidays when only Allison received expensive gifts, while I was handed cheap leftovers. I spoke of how Mother humiliated me in front of friends, mocking me as a shadow next to Allison. I spoke of the glares, the cutting remarks, and the slaps that rained down when no one else was watching. Mother stood there, her face flushed with rage, but she couldn't stop me from speaking. Father buried his head in his hands, collapsing into a chair, his voice hoarse. Why didn't I see anything all these years? I turned to look at him, tears streaming down my face. Because she always hid it well, Dad. In front of you, in front of everyone else, she played the perfect mother. But when it was just me, I choked on my words. She became someone else. Allison gripped my hand tightly, her eyes brimming with guilt. I'm sorry, Sophia, I didn't see, I was so blind. Rebecca nodded slightly, her tone firm. With this testimony and the evidence, we will immediately request a restraining order. Murate, Mother screamed, losing all control. You'll all regret this. I raised you traitors and now you turn and bite the hand that fed you? Father stood up, his expression more terrifying than I had ever seen. You're the one who should regret, Meredith. You are no longer my wife. And you are certainly no longer Sophia's mother. He signaled for hospital security. Mother struggled and hurled curses, but eventually she was dragged out, leaving behind a chilling, empty silence. When the door finally closed, the entire hospital room was drowned in stillness. I sank back into the bed, utterly exhausted, yet lighter than I had ever felt. Rebecca smiled gently. You've done what so many others couldn't. You chose to protect yourself and your baby. Noah bent down and kissed my forehead. You don't have to endure anymore, Sophia. We're going to build the family you always deserved. I clutched his hand and whispered, I lost my old family, but I found a new one. The first rays of dawn streamed through the window, casting a soft glow on the wedding ring on my finger, sparkling like a sacred promise. My life would never again be strangled by darkness. 2 days after my mother was removed from the hospital, my father returned, clutching a thick stack of papers. His face was noticeably gaunter, his eyes heavy, but there was no longer any hesitation in them. He sat down on the chair next to my hospital bed, gathering all his composure before speaking. "Sophie, I've filed for divorce." I froze, his words striking my heart like an electric shock. I thought I must have misheard. But Father nodded, slowly, firmly. "I can't continue living with someone who would hurt our daughter like this. Never again." Allison, standing beside me, squeezed my hand tighter, as if trying to lend me strength. I looked at my father and saw tears silently rolling down his wrinkled cheeks. I had never seen him cry, not once in my entire life. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I left you to endure too much alone." I reached out and took his rough hand. For the first time in my life, I felt there were no longer cold, unreachable walls between us. That the restraining order was officially issued within the week. My mother, Meredith, was banned from coming within 500 feet of me or the baby. Every time she tried to text or call, our family lawyer immediately intervened. She tried blaming, crying, even threatening. But all I felt when I looked at her endless messages was emptiness. No more anger, no more pain. Just one cold truth. She no longer had the power to hurt me ever again. Throughout the rest of my pregnancy, my father and Allison were almost always by my side. My father, the once distant, silent man, became an indispensable companion. He and Noah took me to every prenatal checkup, patiently waiting in the hallway, always with a lukewarm coffee in hand. Every time the doctor turned on the ultrasound and displayed the tiny figure growing inside me, I saw my father smile. "I never thought I'd get a second chance," he whispered once, his eyes never leaving the screen. "But thanks to you, Sophia, I get to start over." Those words were more precious to me than any apology. Allison changed too. She moved out of Mother's house and rented a small apartment just 5 minutes' drive from mine. She showed up almost daily, bringing cooked meals, tiny newborn outfits, and little stories that made me laugh. One afternoon, as we folded tiny clothes into a new dresser, Allison paused. She turned to me, her eyes filled with deep regret. "You endured too much, Sophia, and I left you alone in that house for far too long." I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. "It's not your fault. We were all blinded by her." We hugged each other tightly, bathed in the golden glow of sunset. And for the first time, I truly felt I had a sister. A real family. Mother vanished from our lives. I heard rumors she had moved to another state to live with distant relatives. Good. That distance was like a protective wall around the future I was building. I no longer felt resentment. No longer craved an apology or acknowledgement. I had learned how to let go. And that alone had set me free. One evening in early June, Father invited me, Noah, and Allison to his new house for dinner. He had sold the old house, filled with painful memories, and bought a small home with a backyard shaded by maple trees. We sat together, under the warm glow of yellow lights, listening to the crickets chirp in the yard. Father raised his glass of lemonade, his voice deep and steady. "From today onward, we are a new family. No more lies, no more coldness. Only love and truth." I looked around, saw the proud glint in Noah's eyes, the gentle smile on Allison's face, and the sparkling warmth in my father's gaze. I placed my hand over my belly, where the tiny life inside was growing stronger every day. "A new life, a new hope," I whispered, almost like a vow to myself. "There will be no place for old wounds in my child's life. Only love and light." The first labor pains started at 3 o'clock in the morning, when Denver was still blanketed in heavy mist. I shot up from bed, one hand grabbing the dresser for support, the other cradling my belly, as the contractions hit like crashing waves. Noah woke instantly, springing upright in panic. Sophia, it's time, isn't it? I nodded, sweat pouring down my forehead. In less than 10 minutes, Noah had me in the car, speeding toward Memorial Hospital, the place tied to so many memories of both pain and hope. Allison and father made it just in time before I was wheeled into the delivery room. They ran toward me, their faces so worried it almost made me laugh through the gut-wrenching pain. "You'll be fine," I managed to say, squeezing Noah's hand tightly, as another fierce contraction twisted through my body. The labor lasted more than 16 hours. Each wave of pain felt like it was tearing my body apart. Each tiny heartbeat on the monitor reminded me, hold on, for the baby. Noah never left my side for even a second. He wiped the sweat from my forehead, gripped my hand tightly and whispered, "You're so strong, Sophia. I'm so proud of you." Allison stayed in the delivery room with me, aloud as my support person. She sat behind me, rubbing my back gently each time I screamed in agony. My father, although not allowed inside, waited outside the hallway from dawn until late at night, his eyes bloodshot with worry. "One more push, Sophia, come on," the doctor shouted. I summoned every ounce of strength, as if pouring my entire soul into that final push. And then, in that moment, the first cry of my daughter rang out, high and pure like a bell cutting through all the darkness. I burst into tears, my body utterly exhausted, but my heart overflowing with a feeling I had never known before. Pure love. The nurse wrapped her in a white cloth and gently placed her on my chest. "She's a healthy baby girl," the doctor smiled. "Mother and baby are both doing well." I looked at the tiny life lying in my arms, her little red face, her tiny fists clenched as if grasping the whole world. "Nikki," I whispered. "Welcome to this life." Noah held both of us close, tears streaming uncontrollably down his face. "Thank you. Thank you for bringing her into this world." When I was taken to the recovery room, Allison and my father practically rushed in immediately. My father, the man who had always hidden his emotions, knelt down by my bedside, pressing his forehead against Nikki's tiny hand, his tears dripping onto the hospital bed. "Hello, my little angel," he said in a hoarse voice. "I promise to protect you, just as I once failed to protect your mother." Allison stood beside me, her hand trembling as she gently brushed the sweat-soaked hair from my forehead. "You did it, Sophia. You really did it." I gave a weak smile, clutching Nikki tightly, as if letting go might cause her to vanish from this fragile world. In that moment, for the first time in my life, I understood what true family meant. It wasn't about blood. It wasn't about painful ties. It was about choice. It was about unconditional love. The days following the birth were filled with laughter and warmth in my hospital room. My mother-in-law, Carol, came every morning bringing chicken soup, warm milk, and kind advice. My father-in-law cradled Nikki tirelessly, whispering nonsense stories into her ears, his face glowing like a child with a new toy. Allison stepped into the role of godmother, patiently learning how to change diapers, mix formula, and rock Nikki to sleep. My father spent every weekend sitting beside me, holding Nikki, telling her the stories from his youth he had never shared with me before. Our tiny hospital room had never been so full of love. The day I was discharged, the whole family gathered outside to bring Nikki and me home. The early summer sun poured onto the sidewalk, creating dappled patches of light like a painting of new hope. Noah pushed Nikki's stroller ahead, Allison juggled a diaper bag, and my father carefully double-checked every safety strap on the infant car seat. I stood on the hospital steps, arms around my belly, watching the scene with a lump in my throat. I had lost a mother, but I had gained a true family, where love didn't have to be begged for or bartered. I promised myself, no matter how deep the scars of the past, my daughter would grow up in a home filled with love. No one, no matter how shadowy, would ever take that from us. I placed my hand over my heart, feeling it beating fiercely, and whispered, "Nikki, welcome to a home built on love. Our story, was only just beginning. The first months raising Nikki were a blur of sleepless nights, endless crying, and tight, aching hugs. I lost count of how many times I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, eyes burning from exhaustion, awkwardly pacing the room with Nikki in my arms. But even in the most tiring moments, just seeing that tiny face nestling against my chest melted my heart completely. No one had ever told me that motherhood could be so hard. Nor had they told me it could be so breathtakingly beautiful. I made a vow to do everything differently. No yelling without reason. No condescending stares that would kill her confidence. Never would Nikki have to wonder whether she deserved to be loved. Every time Nikki flailed her tiny arms and legs, I would whisper, "I'm here, sweetheart. I love you, unconditionally." No matter how tired I was, no matter how overwhelmed, I would make sure not a single day passed without Nikki feeling that love. When Nikki turned 3 months old, I joined a support group for young mothers in the area. On the first meeting, I walked into the room with a heavy heart full of anxiety. I feared judgmental stares. I feared being condemned for my past. But when I looked around at the other women, each with her own story, her own scars, I realized I was not alone. We sat in a circle, holding our babies, sharing our fears, our dreams, and our small everyday failures. Some had survived domestic abuse. Some had been abandoned by their families. But all of us had one thing in common. We were fighting not just for ourselves, but for the tiny lives depending on us to create a kinder world. One day, during a meeting, the group facilitator asked everyone to share a promise they wanted to make to their child. When it was my turn, I cradled Nikki in my arms, took a deep breath, and spoke. "My daughter, I promise to always believe in you. Even if the world turns its back on you, I will stand by your side. I will be a home, not a prison. I will love you. Without conditions, without proof." The whole room fell silent. A few mothers quietly wiped their tears. I knew in that moment that the dark past had truly been left behind. I had chosen a new path, and I would walk it to the end. Each day, I learned more from Nikki. Her innocent curiosity. The way she reached out to the world with all her pure trust. Nikki's giggles lit up our small apartment like sunshine. My father, now retired, visited us every weekend. He would hold Nikki, tell silly stories, sometimes simply sit quietly, watching her play. In those moments, I saw in his eyes a silent regret, but also a pride he had never been able to show me before. Allison visited often too, bringing quirky little gifts or handmade items for Nikki. We never mentioned Meredith, the old mother who now existed only as a distant shadow. No one needed to say it aloud, but we all understood. An old chapter had closed, and we were writing a new one together. The following spring, when Nikki started crawling, I took her to the park near our home. I sat on a wooden bench, watching Nikki crawl across the lush green grass, her round face turned up toward the clear blue sky, her eyes shining like stars. I hugged myself and whispered, "You will grow up without having to fight to be loved. You will know that you are worthy. And I will always be here, always." A soft breeze blew through, scattering cherry blossom petals around Nikki, like a blessing from the earth itself. Ending my breath, letting my breath blend with the peaceful rhythm of the afternoon. No more anger. No more fear. Only hope. Hope for a future, no longer haunted by the ghosts of the past, but illuminated by the pure light of love. And I knew for certain we would be okay. Because I was the one guiding our story now, not anyone else. From a child who grew up amid coldness and favoritism, Sophia had bravely stepped out of the darkness to build a life filled with love. Through extraordinary strength, she not only protected herself, but also created a new home for her daughter, where love was a given, not a reward to be earned. Sophia's story reminds us, the past may hurt, but it is our choices today that shape the future. And Sophia chose love, chose the light, What do you think about Sophia's journey and her determination to build a family filled with love? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel to continue reading more heartfelt stories about family life.